consider the years I spent on I Love Lucy to be perhaps the biggest rip-off of my career.
Everyone thought for decades that Vivian Vance had signed a contract to put on weight in order to make Lucy appear slimmer. However, all of that was false. At a party, Lucy made it up as a joke, and for years, the world somehow accepted it. The actual reality of what transpired behind the cameras was even more sinister. Vivian endured suffering that no one was aware of. Her eyes were black when she arrived at work. She celebrated her co-star's death with champagne because she detested him so much. After decades of the industry trying to hide these facts, everything she wanted the world to know is suddenly coming to light. On July 26th, Vivian Roberta Jones was born. Cherryvale, Kansas in 1909. There were no stories or songs in her childhood home. Strict Methodist regulations and a mother who thought acting was shameful governed it. She would go straight to hell if she performed, according to her mother. Despite being the second of 6 children, Vivian felt alienated from her own family from the beginning. Her innate passion for entertaining ran counter to her mother's values, and it was promptly extinguished each time she displayed her spark. Acting was not the only thing her mother didn't enjoy. She thought it was evil. Because of this, there was a conflict going on inside the house, and Vivian's spirit continued attempting to rise but was always compelled to bend. She would carry that tension with her for years after it became a part of her. Vivian's family relocated to Independence, Kansas when she was 6 years old. Her flames really ignited there. She began to sneak out at night for independence, not for enjoyment. She desired to act. Even though her mother thought it was improper, she still wanted to dance, sing, and perform on stage. She met someone at school who didn't criticize her aspirations. She was given the opportunity to shine by Anna Engelman, a drama teacher. Vivian participated in beauty pageants and cheered, and even attended the same school as William Ng, a young man who would go on to become a well-known dramatist. At home, however, nothing changed. Even nevertheless, her relatives made every effort to crush her spirit. Her mother resisted her more the more she performed. Perhaps because it seemed lighter, more liberated, and untied to the life she was seeking to flee, friends began referring to her as Vive. Then came the turning point in the story. Her family name was dropped. She decided to change her name from Jones to Vivian Vance. She chose Vance in honor of Vance Randolph, a man who gathered folk tales. Perhaps she recognized herself in those tales, wild, unrestrained, and unafraid of what others might think. While her family continued ahead without her, she left Kansas and came to Tulsa to pursue theater. She wasn't simply fleeing. The cord was being severed by her. She was no longer the daughter of her mother. Now she was her own person. She was one of the original performers of the Albuquerque Little Theater in 1930, when she was just 21 years old. She represented 2 aspects of her life on stage, a sensual lady and a kind nun. People began referring to the structure as the Vivian Vance Playhouse because of how impressive her performances were. After recognizing her skill, the community came together to support her. To gather money for her to study acting in New York, they even organized a benefit show. She earned a local celebrity after singing My Man in a brief review. She suddenly had a future because of everything she had been warned not to do. She boarded a train to New York with $50 and a suitcase full of aspirations. She auditioned at night and worked as a waitress during the day. There was always rejection. She persisted in skipping meals in order to save money on Metro ticket. She eventually secured a chorus part in the Broadway musical Music in the Air in 1932, which played for 2 years. It was her turn. People gradually started to take notice of her movements, line delivery, and most importantly, her humor. The chorus girl was gradually evolving into something more. She received a last-minute summons to fill in for someone in the 1937 production of Hooray for What, and she went on to participate in more than 200 productions. As a result, she landed her largest stage role in 1941, co-starring with Eve Arden and Danny Kaye in the popular musical Let's Face It. After 547 performances, Vivian had finally established her worth, but the discomfort persisted even after triumph. Despite the pain, she persisted in her progress. Later, during World War II, she traveled all the way to Africa to participate in another performance called Over 21. She was out of the background now. Although she was famous, her personal life was in disarray. She married Joseph Danick Jr. when she was 19 in the hopes that it would allow her to leave her rigid family. It didn't. 3 years later, he departed town, leaving her once more. In 1941, she later wed Philip Ober, an actor. That marriage was even more agonizing, but it lasted longer. The fact that his wife was more successful than he was annoyed Ober. He became violent. He assaulted her. He made her feel insignificant. Her future co-star Lucille Ball even noticed and pointed it out. However, the harm was extensive. Vivian continued to perform, but she was breaking on the inside. Vivian suffered a breakdown in 1945 while performing a piece called The Voice of the Turtle. Let's be honest, I laughed when she explained it so simply. She thought she was going crazy. Everything fell apart, including the strain of celebrity, the anguish of her marriage, and the weight of her upbringing. She began and continued therapy for years. She reassembled herself gradually. She was altered by the encounter. She started going to mental hospitals because she understood the suffering, not because she was famous. She made no attempt to correct others. She simply assured them that they were not alone. She continued to act. Let's be honest, her greatest stage accomplishment was still 1,000 lost opportunities behind the cheers. She relocated to California to pursue a career in movies after The Cradle Will Rock was revived in 1947. It was unsuccessful. She only appeared in 2 motion pictures, The Blue Veil, 1951, and The Secret Fury, 1950. She was promised a dazzling striptease number in a musical by one producer. She declined it. Mary Martin became famous as a result of that role. In retaliation, a choreographer wanted her fired, so she lost a role in Carousel as well. The setbacks kept coming. However, she persisted. A significant development in television occurred in 1951. For the role of Ethel Mertz in I Love Lucy, 42-year-old Vivian Vance was selected. People thought she had signed an odd contract for decades, claiming that in order to make Lucille Ball appear more gorgeous in comparison, she had to put on weight, 15 pounds to be exact. However, that agreement never materialized. It was merely a joke. Lucille made it up for fun at a party by making up rules like never being funnier than her and gaining 5 pounds every week. However, the falsehood persisted for years because many believed it to be true. Actually, Vivian's weight just fluctuated over time. She tried to diet all the time. Furthermore, there was never a formal contract, even though Lucy might have desired to appear more attractive next to her. Nevertheless, that myth rose to prominence as one of Hollywood's most well-known tales. Previous to I Love Lucy, Vivian was not a little-known actress. Her Broadway career began in the late 1920s. She even replaced the legendary Ethel Merman in 2 musicals starring Cole Porter. She acquired her own starring roles by the early 1940s. In 1951, Daisy Arnaz and producer Jess Oppenheimer caught her on stage while she was acting in a play in La Jolla, California. She was immediately hired. However, Lucy looked at Vivian and told her, "You can't play Ethel," after learning that she wasn't happy. "You're my age. Your hair color is identical. You're too attractive." The crew therefore forced Vivian to wear clothing that was too tight and applied makeup to make her appear uncomfortable in order to remedy that. In order for Lucy to shine, they needed her to appear older and less glitzy. When Vivian first met William Frawley, her on-screen spouse, she had no idea who he was. "Who's that old man over there?" she inquired, turning to face Daisy. She smiled and remarked that he resembled her grandfather more when she was informed that he would be portraying her spouse. After hearing that, Frawley never forgiven her. From day one, he didn't like her. Their genuine tension became a part of the show, and that animosity never went away. She didn't only disagree with Frawley, though. Vivian and Lucy also had arguments occasionally. Lucy once yelled at Vivian for being late while she was pregnant. In response, Vivian said something so scathing that Lucy couldn't contain her laughter. They clicked as comedy partners right away. Despite the fact that their battles were real, they worked their magic on screen. It was Vivian who made history in February 1954. She won an Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actress, making her the first female recipient in history. Her 1953 performance as Ethel earned her the prize, which established a whole new Emmy category. It demonstrated the true significance of supporting characters. Vivian received 3 additional nominations in 1954, 1956, and 1957, but she felt stuck despite the recognition and the trophy. Everyone now just knows her as Ethel, the plain landlady, yet she was once a dazzling Broadway star. She became a legend thanks to the Emmy, but she was also stuck in a role she thought would never end. Money turned into a battle as well. She made the same $280 per week as Frowley in season 1. However, she was earning $7,500 per week by season 6. It was hardly a stroke of luck. The reason for this was that she had a powerful agent who consistently requested higher compensation. It was uncommon for women to request extra money in those days. Vivian, however, refused to give up. She demanded much more when she joined the Lucy Show in 1962. She demanded to be identified. Improved clothing and greater control over the process. She didn't hesitate to demonstrate her value because she recognized it. 1952 saw one of I Love Lucy's most cherished sequences. When Lucy and Ethel were working on a conveyor belt, packing chocolates, it was the scene from the chocolate factory. As the chocolate sped up, everyone laughed as they watched them fear. However, it wasn't hilarious at all behind the scenes. The machine continued to malfunction and accelerate at random. For every take, Vivian had to continue eating chocolate. Toward the end, she felt quite nauseous. There was a severe price for what appeared to be pure comedy. Lucy filmed the well-known Vitamia to Vegamin commercial sketch that same year. Lucy slurring her words while intoxicated by a health tonic looked comical, but it wasn't acting. The tonic was a real prop. It had 23% alcohol. The strength of it was unknown to the crew. Lucy was truly inebriated by the last takes, having swallowed spoon after spoon. Those sequences made television gold, even though she was barely able to stand. It demonstrated how actors were occasionally pushed to dangerous boundaries by early television. Although Vivian's 1953 Emmy triumph meant the world to her, she was secretly in pain. She thanked Lucy for her friendship and support in a lovely speech. On the inside, though, she battled with constantly coming in second. She possessed a voice that could fill a theater, talent, and good looks. But only Ethel was visible to the world. Despite winning the Emmy at the age of 44, she continued to land the same kinds of roles rather than being given new chances. She was also imprisoned by the very honor that honored her. Vivian was able to showcase her singing abilities in 1954. Her voice could rival those of Broadway singers, and she had studied opera. She worked hard to get episodes that were about Ethel, such as Ethel's Birthday, where she was able to sing at last. She had a lovely, well-trained, strong, and graceful voice. William Frowley, however, made fun of her every chance he had by claiming that she was not a singer. Nevertheless, fans adored those shows. Vivian was given the opportunity to shine for once. Before the Ethel label took over, it was a peak of the star she truly was. Fame became terrifying by 1956. After I Love Lucy became a global hit, admirers started to go beyond limits. Every week, Vivian received thousands of letters. Some were frightening, while others were lovely. She was followed in public by some. She was not as protected as the stars of today. To feel secure when strolling down the street, she had to hire her own protection. Fear accompanied the celebrity that brought her wealth. Millions of strangers on television had treated her like family, and not all of them understood the difference. The animosity between Frowley and Vivian continued to intensify. She had already quipped that he ought to play her father before the show debuted on October 15, 1951. He was 64. Her age was 39. Being portrayed as his wife made her feel ashamed. During rehearsal, he heard her talking and retaliated by calling her a bag of doorknobs. Later, Daisy Arnaz wrote that Frowley detested working with her and her voice. It was obvious that they didn't like each other. The studio was crowded. By 1953, the situation worsened. Frowley was drinking excessively. He had to conceal his shaking hands in his pockets because he was intoxicated most of the time on set. He hid himself in his dressing room during bouts and would not listen to directors. Vivian was at her breaking point. She insisted on having her own dressing room. Daisy had to prevent them from leaving the set completely. They tried their best to avoid each other off camera after that. Both stars were offered a spin-off show about Fred and Ethel by Desolate Studios in 1955. They might have become wealthy as a result. Vivian refused to work with them again, even though Frowley immediately agreed. Without Lucy and Ricky, she told producers, she didn't think the show would succeed. Everyone was astonished by her refusal. Their chemistry was dubbed gold by Hollywood, even if it was motivated by hatred. Vivian, however, put peace before business. Her desire for fame was outweighed by her loathing. The last chapter followed. William Frowley passed away from a heart attack on Hollywood Boulevard on March 3, 1966. Vivian was at a dinner party that evening. She didn't halt or cry when she received the news. Rather, she lifted her glass and declared, "Cheered all. It wasn't a joke. It was a festivity." His funeral was not attended by her. No flowers were sent by her. She didn't say anything kind. Only his passing put a stop to their 1951 started rivalry. And it wasn't really over even then. It just stopped. Vivian and Lucille Ball, who had always been in charge of every aspect on set, were at odds all the time. Since 1951, they had been America's favorite comedy group. But they were suddenly having trouble finding room to be inventive. It made Vivian feel suffocated. 3 years later, she made a devastating decision. She turned to go. Everyone was startled when she abruptly departed the show in 1965 at the height of her second television success. She was giving up more than simply a role. She was giving up fame and security on the opportunity to change how she is perceived. Prior to all of this, she had been appearing as a guest on the Red Skelton Hour from 1960 until 1962. She portrayed Clara Appleby, a witty woman who demonstrated that Vivian didn't require Lucy to get laughter, in a comedy titled The Iceman Geth that debuted in February 1962. She also appeared in Appleby's 1960 forecasts. She was able to demonstrate something significant to the industry and to herself through these responsibilities. She may move. She was able to support herself. For the first time, millions of people saw that she was more than just Ethel from the Mertz flat. However, not all of the chapters received praise. She made an attempt to make a comeback to Broadway in 1966 with Woody Allen's Don't Drink the Water. It was meant to be her return. Rather, it became a public catastrophe. During early screenings, she was let go and another actress took her place. Even if Woody Allen acknowledged that she wasn't a good fit for the role, it didn't make things any simpler. The rejection took place in front of peers and detractors. Later on November 17, 1966, the play debuted in New York and ran for 598 performances without her. This setback was devastating. She found herself trapped in her previous job as Ethel forever once more. Every step away from Lucy seemed to bring on more heartache. By the 1970s, Vivian had switched from sitcoms and the stage to something more reliable but less glitzy. She played a character named Maxine and became the happy face of Maxwell House coffee advertisements. She smiled as she distributed coffee in one of the most memorable advertisements from around 1976, adding, "Could be the best instant of your day." She did these advertisements well, and they were comfortable and familiar, but she knew what they meant in her heart. She was done pursuing dramatic parts. In 1953, she was the recipient of the first ever Emmy for Supporting Actress. She was merely trying to remain visible now. They appeared to be bound by the same destiny while performing with Margaret Hamilton, best known as the Wicked Witch. One role is loved, while everything else is forgotten. Something lovely occurred in 1977. She accepted Lucille Ball's invitation to shoot Lucy Calls the President, a one-time CBS special. Once more, Vivian played the neighbor. For many onlookers, it was simply a charming reunion. However, not many were aware that Vivian had a stroke when the movie was being filmed. She made an effort to hide it, and she still had the same endearing, witty, and piercing appearance as Viv on film. However, the reality was harsh. She was ill. Her second-to-last appearance would be that special. Her last one appeared in the brief series Sam with Mark Harmon. She was battling something much more serious behind the scenes than poor ratings. She was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it had been a part of her life for years. There was more to Vivian's story than comedy and celebrity. It was about sorrow that most people never saw, heartbreak, and resiliency. Her 1933 first marriage had been a living hell. 2 years later, she had to go to a women's shelter to avoid Joseph Danek's assault because he was terribly jealous. For decades, she kept this a secret. However, it influenced all subsequent developments. She started to be afraid of guys. She became more anxious. Unfortunately, the pattern continued. Philip Ober, her second husband, caused her considerably more pain. He struck her so severely during the 1954 I Love Lucy movie shoot that she arrived at work with a black eye. It was visible through the makeup. When Lucille Ball saw it, she became furious. "I will divorce him if you don't." "For you," she said. However, nothing could repair the harm. Ober's jealousy escalated into violence as his career was failing while hers was flourishing. Desi Arnaz tried to calm him down by giving him modest roles on the show, but that only made him more irate. Vivian was tired, scared, and stuck. The psychological toll of all this suffering continued to mount. In 1945, while on tour for a theater production, she experienced her first mental breakdown. She then received a diagnosis of anxiety neurosis, which was linked to her toxic relationships and early life. Although specifics are few, there are rumors of a second collapse in 1974 that may have required electroshock treatment. It is evident that she struggled with mental illness throughout her life, even before it was publicly discussed. She suddenly became a voice for those in need during a period when mental health was frowned upon. Her inability to conceive, however, was her greatest pain and something she seldom ever discussed. Nothing worked for her after she miscarried early in her marriage to Ober. She became more and more broken with each failed attempt. It was more difficult to watch Lucille Ball raise her own kids. Desi Jr. and Lucy, like her own, Vivian cherished them. By providing young actresses with the kind of care she was unable to provide for her own children, she attempted to fill that need. On the inside, though, she was always feeling like she had failed. Her battle with breast cancer started in 1973. When the cancer advanced to her bones, she had a mastectomy, chemotherapy, and further procedures. She kept the suffering hidden from others. She worked, joked, and smiled on the outside. But she was in pain behind closed doors. Still, she continued. It wasn't until it was too late that even close friends realized how bad her health was. She had no desire for sympathy. All she wanted was to live a dignified life. She had been quietly suffering even through the way she looked at. "I love Lucy." She stated in interviews from 1977 that she was made to remain heavier than she desired in order to make Lucy appear slimmer. To maintain the impression of the dowdy housewife, she was forced to wear hideous clothing and subpar cosmetics. She detested it. She was chic and sophisticated off-screen, but the show didn't highlight that side of her. She required treatment just to get through filming since the pressure was wearing her down. Further back in time, she was misdiagnosed with Bell's palsy in the 1930s after a portion of her face became paralyzed. Years later, though, she would relate that to the trauma she had as a youngster. Not only a medical condition, but also the body's response to psychological distress. She started to feel extremely self-conscious about her appearance and how people saw her. She never got over that insecurity. After I Love Lucy concluded, she received an offer of millions to continue the Fred and Ethel tale in a new show. She was not prepared, but William Frawley was. She detested him. From the beginning, their relationship had been poisonous. He was too inebriated, and she once remarked that he was 22 years older than her. He never forgiven her. She left everything behind when CBS offered a spin-off. Being close to him again was not worth any amount of money. Lucille Ball paid her a visit in her last days a few weeks before she died. Vivian was lodging at a Belvedere home. A young woman from the neighborhood named Paige Peterson observed them spending the entire afternoon together. They chuckled, they sobbed. Lucy was crying when she left. She remained silent. She simply turned to leave, broken. According to Lucy Arnaz, Lucy's daughter, her mother wept for months about losing Vivian. Despite their arguments, they ultimately became comic soulmates, united by a bond that went beyond celebrity. Vivian Vance revealed how the industry had always treated her in a series of letters she dictated before passing away on August 17, 1979. Producers told her that her desire to direct wasn't ladylike. Everywhere she went, they obstructed her. Those letters weren't merely farewells. They were her last scream against the barriers she had battled all her life.